MMA's biggest scandal from 2022, and probably from the last decade, was the suspension of MMA coach and former fighter James Krause over alleged fight fixing inside the UFC. This year, on March 25, 2025, this story finally had a glimpse of closure when UFC vets and Glory MMA teammates Jeff Molina and Darrick were handed their punishment after 29 months, while there's still no verdict on James Krause's future. So, was this a giant fight-fixing scheme getting busted, or just an overall nothing burger?
I do pretty well. I make more money gambling on MMA than I do anything else.
Let's recap a bit. While a good fighter and a great coach at Glory MMA, James Krause proved to be an outstanding MMA bettor.
Ortega is a little hittable, and if this fight hits the ground, he's subbing Yair fast. Ortega inside the distance as well. Plus money, that's going to be hard to turn down.
But when you combine James Krause's knowledge of betting, because he bets every week on fights, and he's usually successful.
Although Krause made his gambling prowess public around 2022, later information would arise, linking Krause to an offshore online sportsbook since at least 2019. He's been a fixture on shows such as the UFC Pros Pick Show, the Anik and Florian podcast, ESPN's Best Bets, and also on UFC Fight Pass, sharing his analysis and picks before creating his own platform. The 1% Club podcast began in May 2022, featuring Krause and his Glory MMA fighters, such as Brandon Moreno and James Gallagher, then later shifting the focus to become a fight prediction-oriented show.
It's about value. Like, if we're talking about, if Vegas is telling me he's a 4-1 favorite to win, but I can get him at a 1.5 favorite to win by how he normally does, but by decision, that makes a little bit more sense to me.
Krause's predictions became his bread and butter, enabling him to launch his own private Discord and charge a monthly $50 fee for access to his picks firsthand.
Betting Discord, I just started, I think like a week ago. We do like betting, crypto, real estate. I think we have over 400 some members in a week. And I'm just giving out my betting picks and other crypto. I have a crypto play that I gave out that's up like 93% or something in a week.
The project quickly grew, amassing 2,000 members in just under 3 months. To put into perspective, if every Discord member theoretically paid the flat $50 fee, Krause would be earning around $100,000 a month from this endeavor. Keep this in mind. On August 1st, 2022, so just 3 months after the first episode of the 1% Club, Krause made his now infamous appearance at the MMA Hour with Ariel Helwani, being overwhelmingly open about his gambling strides.
Oh, I bet every single card, just about every fight.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a Discord, like 2,000 members in it. We crushed it. Last week we destroyed it. I take over people's accounts and play for them. Like I post the losses, myself on some accounts. Like I do pretty well. I make more money gambling on MMA than I do anything else.
Krause just admitted live on air to betting on fights and proxy betting for his clients, 2 illegal activities in his state of Missouri. And although his profit history might be questionable, according to some of the research, Krause states his betting unit is $5,000 and confirmed on Twitter that he bets around $100,000 per card.
We have a couple different entry-level positions. Like we have a $50 a month and I have a $2,000 a month. But they make way more than, they pay, that's for sure. I've been in the UFC since 2013, and I've never had a sense of security about my job, ever. And nor should any of these other athletes. Like, you have to understand that everybody there is an expendable asset. Like, everybody there is. The UFC doesn't need anybody to make that work for them. They don't. They have a media machine behind them that they can make anybody the next star. You see it every week. They make the new thing the next star, and that's great for them. They have created that. They have earned the right to do that. But I'm not going to count on somebody else paying me more to make sure my kids are taken care of. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to take matters in my own hands. I'm going to take responsibility for it, and I'm going to make sure they're set myself.
As if it wasn't enough foreshadowing, Krause's brash and confident demeanor quickly shifted when Ariel asked about betting on his own fighters.
It's not even close. It's not even close.
And just curious, like the Moreno fight, like fights that you're involved in, will you bet on those too?
Yeah.
Wow, that's
sometimes. Yeah.
Did you bet on Brandon?
Of course.
He was a big favorite though.
2-1. No, that's not a big favorite.
Oh, he was okay. Well, what did he close at?
205.
Oh, okay.
Minus 205.
It's important to note that at the time of his appearance, there was no written rule on the UFC's Athlete Code of Conduct that prohibited fighters from betting in MMA fights. That came a month after this interview, on October 17th, when the UFC updated its policy expressly prohibiting fighters from wagering on bouts. Chris Weidman and Chris Wade shed light on how this would be monitored, being blocked from even registering on the sportsbook's website. On his Discord server, Krause stated this change wouldn't affect him and it was business as usual. Now we arrive at that infamous fight. On November 5th, 2022, we had Fight Night Rodriguez versus Lemos, where Darrick Minner, cornered and coached by James Krause, faced Shayilan Nuerdanbieke on the main card at a soulless UFC Apex. Leading up to the fight, there was allegedly a significant shift in betting lines, with a surge of bets favoring Nuerdanbieke by finish.
If you just look at that graph, it's Nuerdanbieke is hanging around minus 200 all week, and then it just falls off a cliff leading up to the fight. As you can see the dates, it falls off a cliff. Same thing with Darrick Minner. His line at the very end just skyrockets as we're going into it. And then, obviously, lastly, one of the most suspicious one is Nuerdanbieke, the win by KO, TKO, just plummets as the fight is coming, a guy that had 0 UFC finishes prior to this.
Unbeknownst to the public at the time, Minner had sustained a serious knee injury prior to the bout and failed to disclose it to the Nevada Athletic Commission, opting to go on with the fight.
I'm walking in with a bum knee. How many times in my career, mind you, that was my 40th professional fight and my 60th fight overall, have I walked into a fight not being okay or having ankle, bummed something, you know what I mean? Like,
curiously, Minner threw 2 out-of-character hard body kicks with his injured leg, collapsing on the canvas and being an easy prey to Nuerdanbieke, leading to the unsurprising first-round TKO finish that gamblers were precisely betting on. Minner later addressed the uncharacteristic body kick as part of his and Krause's game plan.
What was the reason that you felt like a need to throw that kick at that moment?
well, go watch his fight with Steven Garcia, the next fight that he has, and tell me what he gets hit by and what he gets dropped by. And you'll see the reason that I threw a switch kick to the body is because his next fight, he gets dropped and finished with the switch kick to the body. And yeah, how crazy is that?
But speculations of a dive or a fix were already running wild, both on Twitter and on Krause's Discord server. A month later, US Integrity, a US-based betting integrity firm, begins an investigation into the fight on November 6th, with the UFC also launching an investigation in conjunction with Don Best Sports, an independent betting integrity service, the following day. The Dana was quick to dismiss the situation, with the official line being that no money was lost from betting, as no bookies took the action on the fight.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things. There's absolutely zero proof that anybody that was involved bet on it. First of all, nobody even took the action on the fights. You know, they just saw that that type of action was trying to come in, and it got shut down. But hopefully you see how easy that is to detect now, and the risk is not worth the reward.
Efforts to distance the UFC from Krause were already being made, as Glory MMA bantamweight Miles Johns was not allowed to have him in his corner the following weekend, with a post-fight shout-out to him also being scrubbed from the Fight Pass library.
Almost across the United States, my coach last night at the dinner table got pulled, and they said the UFC was suspending him, so he couldn't be here in my corner. So I got my pops. Almost across the United States, so I got my pops. I got my two brothers with.
Notice anything different?
First off, what happened to your coach? I mean, you said he was suspended. We don't know anything about that. What happened?
Yeah, I'm not really sure of the details about what exactly happened. They just called him last night and said that he was unable to corner me today. So I'm sure you guys will be finding out what's going on soon enough, as will I.
But the sonic boom from this bombshell being dropped was already being felt in the MMA landscape. The New Jersey Athletic Commission banned sportsbooks from taking bets on fights where James Krause is involved in. Ontario, the biggest province in Canada, banned UFC betting altogether, with the Alberta Gambling Commission following suit. On the same day, the UFC, facing public embarrassment and a potential hit on the sport's integrity, took swift action by prohibiting any UFC fighters from training under James Krause, while also releasing featherweight Darrick Minner. The following day, Glory MMA's flyweight Jeff Molina pulled out of his scheduled fight against Jimmy Flick. Unsurprisingly, Krause's Discord server and YouTube channel were subsequently scrubbed from the internet. From then on, speculations ran wild on the YouTube content farm.
Yeah, real cool. Not cool for James Krause, though, I can tell you that much.
What do you mean, man? What's wrong with James Krause? I actually hit him up before the fights last night and threw 10,000 on him. He gave me 100% picks. Right. Yeah.
You know, I know you need the money. We can, we can quadruple what you're going to make if you just go in there,
You're going to get injured. It's not even really like a loss, and we can make out like bandits. And then he leaked it to the whales, and then the whales changed the line, and he got popped.
They've gone in and confiscated his iPads, his computers, his cell phones,
all of it.
His records. And then if you are someone like Minner, they're doing the same thing to you. They're saying, hey,
Minner's
we need your
done.
phone. Yeah, we need your phone. We need your records. We need your laptop. We need everything from you as well.
I know that Darrick Minner got cut by the UFC. Stand by. No one's going to give him a contract now.
Like from their investigation, was he tanking fights?
It's seemingly that it looks like.
And then where it
it's
gets
going that
dicey,
way.
what they're saying is what Krause would do is, he had some rich friends, and then he'd be like, hey, take this, do this, bet on this guy.
And how huge of a fucking it just came in out of nowhere. The betting, right? It was so obvious that they had to investigate it.
The fucking idiots like Jesse on Fire claiming that the FBI is arresting everybody and there's raids while he's ripping bongs and not able to keep a job. Did any of that bother you when all that was going down?
Yeah, man, it's just weird. It's weird that, you just got to ignore it as much as possible because, the truth. None of these people know who I am, for one. They don't know any situation. They don't know if they only knew what I took to get to where I was, motherfuckers. You know what I mean? Like,
the pressure on UFC brass was palpable, as just a year earlier, the company reached a 9-figure deal with DraftKings to serve the US and Canada. The grip that betting companies have inside the UFC is undeniable, as betting odds are mentioned for every fight, either verbally or as part of on-screen graphics, and a regular in-fight topic of conversation on the air among the broadcast crew.
Israel Adesanya, the minus 675 betting favorite at close. As you see one rather large wager highlighted there on DraftKings Sportsbook.
Outside the octagon, sportsbooks have also been sponsoring numerous fighters and content creators for their own gambling picks and endorsements.
This video is sponsored by Prize Picks. Now, Prize Picks is a daily fantasy sports game where you play directly from your phone.
Now, I have partnered with DraftKings, the official sports betting partner of the UFC.
Play $5 and get $50 instantly to use using code GURU.
No Shame UFC is going down this weekend, and our partner with DraftKings to deliver this special message.
A week later, the Dana's initial dismissive tone was gone. Allegedly, several government investigations were ongoing, with the FBI being involved.
Would you even label it a concern, fight fixing in your sport?
Huge concern. Now it is.
You are concerned about it.
Now that there's an investigation and it could be possible that it happened. Yeah. Well, what's the UFC going to do? We let these guys know not to bet on fights. Do you know what the outcome of this is? Like, if I penalize them, you get cut. They're going to go to fucking federal prison. Federal fucking prison.
Days later, the Nevada Athletic Commission handed James Krause and Darrick Minner indefinite suspensions. Curiously, the reason given was not regarding any gambling issues, but for failure to disclose an injury to the commission on his pre-fight questionnaire. I believe it's not a stretch to say this type of situation happens quite often in the fight business. TJ Dillashaw's fight against Aljamain Sterling was another clear example of a fighter getting inside the octagon heavily injured, while also not disclosing the information.
I gotta apologize to the weight class. Kind of held it up. I completely blew my shoulder out the end of April as soon as I started getting ready for this, and probably dislocated a good 20 times throughout training camp.
And looking at the co-main event, were you aware that TJ Dillashaw had that shoulder injury leading up to the fight?
I had no idea. That's a problem. Yeah.
How do you think the Athletic Commission could have missed that? Because he said it had been dislocating a lot throughout training camp.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how could the Athletic Commission know if he doesn't tell us? You know what I mean? You got to tell everybody. You got to tell us.
Ironically, UFC vet Cub Swanson publicly stated he had prior knowledge of Dillashaw's shoulder injury. So who's to say Swanson or any other person didn't place a bet on this fight with insider information? The reality is that most MMA fighters get inside the octagon with some kind of injury, and tracking the leakage of information from gyms and training camps would be extremely difficult. And probably the most notable example, Michael Bisping fought numerous fights and even claimed the middleweight belt with only one functioning eye.
How did you pass this test?
With great difficulty. Lying, cheating, bullshit codes. I fucking lied to so many doctors. I couldn't quit. I had no choice. I had to still fight, you know. Now life's great, but back then I was still very much financially struggling. And yeah, all I had Well, if you look at that.
Wow, it has gotten worse.
Yeah, there's just nothing there. So
The point here is not to list injured fighters not pulling out of their fights, but to show how the Athletic Commission enforces its rules selectively and at their own discretion. Darrick Minner is guilty of the same violation Bisping, Dillashaw, and many others past and present fighters are guilty of. Going into fights injured is not much of a fighter's choice, then it is a design flaw on the health insurance side of the fight business.
I think I only got covered if I got injured in the fight.
Yeah.
I don't think even in
And that's
training
actually
camp.
an athletic
You don't
commission.
get not in training camp. Yeah, only in the fight.
And then
most injuries happen
in training camp. In training camp.
Which sucks because that's why most of us have all fought with injuries. That's like the dark truth of the matter. Is it like you'll tear your knee? I've torn meniscus, broken my hand. You know, I one time had like a chip in my elbow for one of my title fights. Like I literally could not extend my arm, and it was like $15,000 surgery. I was like, oh. Well, fuck, go ahead and schedule the fight for Tuesday. And then as soon as the fight was over with, I'm like, hey guys, my elbow doesn't feel right. That is 90% of every fighter who says he got hurt in the fight, he got hurt before the fight.
Yeah.
But the way the rules work, he only gets paid if he got hurt in the fight.
Wow.
However, less than 2 months after that infamous fight, the Nevada Athletic Commission also suspended flyweight Jeff Molina indefinitely on December 26, 2022, citing that Molina was involved in some substantial way. 2 weeks later, Krause's situation got even worse, as information surfaced of his work as an agent for Costa Rica-based abcbetting.ag as early as 2019. Anonymous sources said they placed bets through Krause and claimed he offered a line of credit and referral kickbacks for new clients. He allegedly took payments through Venmo and PayPal, making Krause guilty of violating the Wire Act, which prohibits anyone from knowingly transmitting wagering information across state lines. As the situation deepened, the UFC scrambled to fight against public's perception of the sport's integrity deterioration. On January 19th, 2 months after the start of the investigation, the UFC announced US Integrity as its official partner as an overseer of gambling activities. Although that partnership only lasted 1 year and ended in December 2023, this announcement was apparently enough to have the order restored, as gambling commissions started reinstating UFC betting on their books. With the UFC's public embarrassment coming to an end and their million-dollar gambling deals safe, the biggest MMA scandal of recent years quietly disappeared from the news cycle.
You made gambling illegal, so why are you penalizing these young fighters that don't have anything to do with that, and they're coming out of this camp? And you're also, what if the guy's innocent? Okay, what if it turns out, because there's an investigation, and what if it turns out he's innocent? You've destroyed his livelihood. You've destroyed his gym. You've destroyed his reputation. And we don't even know what the reality of the situation is.
To the UFC, this whole James Krause thing was already over, and their asses were saved. As for the other parts, not that much. Darrick Minner was suspended until last month, on March 25th, when he was finally handed his punishment, a 29-month retroactive ban. Jeff Molina was handed a 3-year retroactive ban that will expire later this year in November. Both were guilty of violating Rule 467.885 of the Nevada Commission Rulebook for failing to disclose a serious injury and handed a $235 fine, but according to Nevada Deputy Attorney General Matthew Feely, Molina had direct knowledge of an undisclosed injury of a fellow fighter and placed significant bets. Allegedly, Molina had previously referred to James Krause's Discord server as insider trading, having the scoop on injuries. Molina took to X to express his distaste for the decision, but might unwillingly had ratted on himself, saying, quote, "The fact is, a fighter fought injured, which happens literally all the time and obviously word got out." Regardless of the punishment, speculations about who tipped the investigations still ran wild. As for James Krause, there's still no word on what those investigations found against him. Allegedly, Krause could be guilty of violating the Wire Act, of illegal gambling, and of proxy gambling, as well as the fight-fixing allegations on top. With clearly a lot to lose, namely his Discord server earning him up to $100,000 per month, I find it difficult to believe that Krause himself was the one who made Minner's injury information public. UFC's ban on Krause still hasn't been lifted, and Krause must imagine he won't be making an MMA comeback after the character assassination he's been a subject of, before even being indicted. To this day, no criminal charges or athletic punishments have been given to James Krause other than Nevada State Athletic Commission's indefinite suspension.
You know, honestly, whatever he did, I don't care. I don't really judge him. But I think they're using him as a scapegoat. I think that what they're getting away with rigging all these fucking fights, man, it hails in comparison to what fucking Krause did. They're using Krause as a scapegoat.
Krause sold the ownership of Glory MMA right after his ban in December 2022 to longtime friend and Iridium sports agent Joe Worcester in a bid to absolve his gym and its fighters from the UFC embargo. Recently, Krause has been leaning into his real estate endeavors, but can still be found regularly at Glory MMA's Instagram reels. And since July 2024, Krause is listed as Glory's owner, MMA, and jiu-jitsu coach. But the once powerhouse gym is now a shadow of what it once was, with top contenders like Grant Dawson, Brandon Moreno, Jeff Molina, Julian Marquez, and Miles Johns, all leaving after UFC banned Krause. But the chaos doesn't end there. Glory student Megan Anderson's online meltdown against James Krause, accusing him of being a bad coach before her 2021 fight against WMMA GOAT Amanda Nunes, prompted a heated defense from Jeff Molina. The back and forth would later end up in accusations of reporter Laura Sanko having an affair with the Glory head coach in an infamous, now-deleted tweet. In May 2023, former UFC flyweight title challenger Tim Elliott went public about his divorce from Gina Mazzani after she cheated on him with his training partner Kevin Kroom on their wedding day.
I accused Gina of having something with Kevin Kroom before, and she always said no, and I didn't have any proof, so then I always felt bad about that. Well, then later this lady showed me hundreds of texts describing everything, and what I released is actually pretty light for what actually happened. And
all three of them were also part of Glory MMA. Elliott would later sponsor Tony Soto on his bare-knuckle boxing fight against Kevin Kroom at BKFC 52. So yeah, Glory MMA became a dumpster fire. Or, as Grant Dawson puts it, turned into Tiger King.
If Glory MMA and Fitness was a TV show and we threw in all of the things that have been going on there, you would say, oh, the ratings must be down and they're just trying to make the show exciting again because there's no way all of this stuff is happening. This is real life. Glory MMA and Fitness is kind of the new Tiger King.
As for the UFC, it's business as usual.
Paddy Pimblett is held pretty steady as the betting favorite, albeit slightly against Michael Chandler. Who do you love?
I'm going with the underdog.
So I'm picking less than 99.5 significant strikes. Code Timbo when you sign up.
What up, guys? Welcome to another Blessed Breakdown brought to you by Steak.
I like that. I like fun. Yeah. Gambling's fun. Like if they outlawed all gambling on the UFC, I would be so upset.
But as absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, the fact that betting scandals are not in front page news does not make them inexistent. In fact, the Minner-Nuerdanbieke fight was first flagged only because of the sudden line swings. So we can speculate that, what if gamblers learned from their mistake and started placing wagers more sparsely? Or what if there are other Discord groups catering private information to gamblers for a fee, but their owner didn't go live on Ariel Helwani's show to boast about their gains? And if James Krause really is guilty of being the underboss of a fight-fixing network of fighters and gamblers, why wasn't he ever charged with any crime?
So if they can't find intent on James Krause, essentially you took away his gym, all of his fighters, his ability to bet, his job.
After 3 years of that infamous fight in an obscure Apex fight night with no live crowd, these and other questions still remain unanswered. Thank you for watching.
Yes! You should bet on something more exciting. Bet99 advocates responsible gambling. Take advantage of their built-in tools to help you gamble responsibly.
Let me guess. You're not impressed with my performance.